South Africa's ruling African National Congress is contemplating forming a government of national unity that will bring about political parties to work together. So the party says the result of the May 29th national election, which did not produce an outright winner, indicates that South Africans want all political parties to work together for the benefit of the people and country. And analysts say the lack of cooperation amongst political parties in the municipalities should be blamed for coalition failure. I want to take you back to 1994, where the interim constitution negotiated by the multi-party negotiations to end apartheid that started in 1990 allowed all parties that gained more than 10% of the vote to participate in a government of national unity. So the new government at the time that was elected in 1994 had members from many political parties in the cabinet. This government of national unity lasted until 1999, although it was dominated by the African National Congress, and a reported lack of shared decision-making prompted the second largest party at the time, the National Party, to withdraw from the GNU in 1996. But would adopting the late President Nelson Mandela's model of a government of national unity, like the one adopted in 1994, be the panacea for a stable government? Now, joining us virtually is political analyst Levi Ndou to discuss this. A very good morning to you, Dr. Ndou. Thanks for joining us. Welcome.
Good morning to you, Simpiwe. Good morning to the viewers at home. Thank you for having me.
It's an absolute pleasure, Dr. Ndou. And it's interesting how we've come full circle. I mean, President Cyril Ramaphosa back in 1994 played a very key role in terms of the formation of the government of national unity. And 30 years later, he finds himself at the helm of a party that is still negotiating another government of national unity. And just a few months as a lead up to the 2024 elections here in South Africa, a term that was bandied about was coalition and coalition government. But not much was said about the government of national unity. I want us to dissect, the differences between the two, what each entails.
Well, I think it's important to know that indeed President Ramaphosa has a very good history of what has actually happened in the past. The decision to opt for a government of national unity is informed by the fact that the ANC has not won the majority, the 50+1 in parliament, and they find themselves on the crossroads. The first that most people thought was that maybe we could go for a coalition, and now the ANC finds itself in a very difficult situation, whether they have to choose parties that are on the right and parties that are on the left. And the ANC appears not to take a firm decision on which parties they can enter into a coalition with, because whatever decision that they take has a potential to backfire. But what therefore becomes the difference is that in a coalition, political parties come together in order to form a government. As long as they are able to reach a 50+1, they can do that having isolated other political parties, even though they performed very, very well in the elections. In the government of national unity, what you do is that you invite all political parties that have actually performed better in the elections. You might decide to take those that got more than 10%, or even 5%, and then you allocate positions to these different political parties. What you also then do in the government of national unity is to invite everyone to be in government, and you actually extend your hand without choosing exactly which party is supposed to participate in the GNU. Right. You only look at the performance. You do that for the purposes of harmony and for the purposes of unity amongst different political parties. Or it can also backfire, but at this stage, the ANC has found this to be a better choice.
And just picking up on what you said, I suppose we need to extend our conversation to the level of influence that each party has in terms of influencing policy, in terms of influencing, major decisions that will affect government departments. And it's often been insinuated that a potential ANC and DA coalition may be punted to settle investor nerves due to, the so-called business-friendly nature of the Democratic Alliance, but also, on the other hand, further empowers the DA to serve the elites, apparently, and thus undermining the will and the capacity of the government to drive economic transformation in South Africa. So does a government of national unity serve the interests of a certain political party or the general populace?
Unfortunately, we're finding ourselves here because we do not have the party that got the 50+1.
Yeah.
And what I think they intend doing is to try and bring all the parties together and develop programs together that should move South Africa forward. It is also very correct that the ANC and the Democratic Alliance have sharp differences on policy issues, and on many instances, they do not agree. The reference to the 1994 maybe would be to adopt ways in which they are able to agree on a number of issues. And you recall that in the 1994 arrangement, they have to adopt the principle of sufficient consensus.
Yes.
Because at that time, they had to avoid going into a vote because they knew that when MPs vote on particular issues, that has a potential to further divide the nation. So I think those are the kind of routes that they might adopt in order to move forward with this GNU. It has its implications, it has its advantages, but we should also recall that the GNU also did not see its lifespan because other members, and the National Party, ended up withdrawing from the government of national unity.
And taking into cognizance that the GNU is centered on parliamentary support for the executive, now, in the event that opposition parties in the GNU don't necessarily agree on policy with the ANC regarding decisions on government departments, is there perhaps an instrument that would ensure that disagreements don't affect service delivery?
Unfortunately, that is the route that, if adopted, should find ways and means to be managed. There are a lot of decisions that the ANC might take. There are a lot of decisions or proposals that can be made by parties like the EFF, which, of course, we all know that maybe the Democratic Alliance might not agree with. So these parties, because you and I have decided that they should work together, they should be able to find ways and means, convince each other, negotiate with one another until they reach an agreement. And I think that is where the concept of sufficient consensus has to come in. But what is also important is that those who are going to be participating in the GNU, in case it is adopted, should actually go there with one thing in mind, which will be there to ensure that there is stability, to ensure that there is good governance, and also ensuring that the citizens at the end of the day are able to get what they actually deserve. Another danger of the GNU and even coalitions, it's when you have got political parties that are not genuine when they're entering into this kind of arrangements, who will also be having hidden agendas. And those, in my view, are some of the issues that have negatively affected the cooperation between and amongst different political parties in government.
Now, in the mix of the GNU and coalition brouhaha is the emergence of smaller parties who should never be underestimated by all means. I mean, these parties are the kingmakers in coalitions because they hold the reins of power. I mean, they can hold authorities hostage by using their votes to support or undermine that particular coalition government or the government of national unity. And just looking at the dynamics and the political capital that these small emergent parties have, who are they? Who are these potential kingmakers that we should be on the lookout for, especially those that might be included in the GNU?
We can talk about kingmakers, especially when we're talking about coalitions. And that is another route that can still be adopted by these political parties. You have the Patriotic Alliance, you have got Action SA, who are the potential kingmakers. But also at the same time, you have got the EFF, you have got the MK party that can still play very, very crucial or significant roles in being kingmakers. But if they adopt the GNU setup, all parties or most parties will be part of government, and the GNU can only collapse if the majority of parties decide to withdraw from the government of national unity. So that could be the difference between the two. With the coalitions, it's very easy to collapse them. We've seen that in the different metros that at any given time, government can collapse because kingmakers might have taken certain decisions, and the next day, everything falls apart.
All right, Dr. Ndo, great chatting to you. Thank you so much for sharing your thoughts and your insights with us and helping us understand, the dynamics and what a GNU or a Government of National Unity entails. That was a political analyst and lecturer at the Tshwane University of Technology, Dr. Levi Ndo, just taking us through some of the, sentiments that have been shared in the public domain with regards to the formation of a Government of National Unity. The ANC on Thursday did announce that they are now open to inviting other smaller parties to join them, to join forces in creating and forming a government of national unity.